Welcome back to our third and final webcast in this series entitled Introduction to SBIR and STTR Proposal Writing. I concluded my previous webcast by stating that once you identify a solicitation and topic that appear to be a fit for you, and once you have verified that fit with an agency representative, it's time to begin planning and writing your proposal. Your Phase 1 proposal is essentially a feasibility study. You have two goals for your Phase 1 proposal. The first, as I said previously, is to demonstrate the technical, scientific, and commercial merit and feasibility of your approach and your envisioned commercial product. Your second goal, and perhaps the most important of the two, is to win a Phase 2 award. I think that it is important to clearly articulate your feasibility study in your summary or in an introduction to your objectives. This should be a single sentence statement regarding what you propose to demonstrate the feasibility of or what you propose to prove. Drawing on an example from a past proposal, the goal of that STTR Phase 1 project was to demonstrate the feasibility of using high-power computing technology to rapidly solve large supply chain optimization problems. Your Phase 1 deliverable is most frequently a report. However, sometimes an agency will request some type of prototype, particularly in the case of software-related projects. There are two main components to a proposal. The first is a detailed description of the proposed research, and the second is a budget. NIH refers to these two sections as research plan and budget. DoD refers to them as technical volume and cost volume. As I mentioned earlier, an unfortunate hallmark of the SBIR and STTR programs is that each agency has done things a little differently than the other agencies. The agencies are rather prescriptive in their length, format, and content requirements, and consequently and unfortunately, they're prescriptive differently. Agencies prescribe different page limits, font sizes, and margins. NIH went so far as to require that you choose among 4 specific font faces. However, they've loosened up on this requirement recently and now simply recommend rather than require one of these 4 font faces. Perhaps the most challenging difference among the agencies is that they use different names and have different content requirements for the various sections of their proposal. Consequently, I urge you to use the instructions as a checklist and write to your agency's evaluation criteria. I recommend that you familiarize yourself with the instructions and read the evaluation criteria before you begin writing. When I'm reviewing and critiquing a draft proposal, I keep a printed copy of the agency's instructions right next to my computer. I also suggest that once you have completed your draft, you then go back to review the instructions and evaluation criteria again to make sure that you have addressed everything that's relevant to your project. I'm going to present a brief overview of a generic SBIR and STTR proposal. This is a generic format not tailored to any particular agency. As I said in my previous slide, agencies use different names and have different content requirements for the various sections of their proposals. In my slides, I've listed 2 names for each section I plan to discuss. The first is a name used by NIH, and the second is the one used by DoD. Together, DoD and NIH account for approximately 70% of Phase 1 awards. For the most part, I'm simply going to refer to the first NIH name in my comments. There are three common sections to a generic SBIR and STTR proposal. The first is significance, then there's technical objectives, and your approach, statement of work, or my preferred term, work plan. In addition, each agency expects you to demonstrate your knowledge of the state-of-the-art or practice in the field. Sometimes this is requested in a specific section, such as related work. Otherwise, borrowing a food analogy, you're expected to pepper or season your proposal with suitable references as appropriate throughout. In addition, each agency will require you to address technology commercialization. Each agency also requires some form of summary. One of the things that all the agencies agree on is that there should be no proprietary information in your summary. That's because if your project is funded, your summary will be published. In addition, you should note that each agency provides a mechanism for marking proprietary information in your full proposal, but you have to mark it their prescribed way. In the significance section of your proposal, you're asked to define and discuss the specific technical problem or unmet need addressed and explain why it is important. Like an attorney presenting their case, this is where you make the case for the importance of your topic and explain why it is worthy of government funding to develop. You may also choose to include important background information, but avoid the temptation to include too much. Entrepreneurs, for their part, often like to write all about their technology and provide lots of background information. Reviewers, for their part, would generally prefer to see more detail in your work plan. Be sure to clearly state what is innovative about your technology and its anticipated impact. Some agencies, such as NIH and NSF, require a separate innovation section. Contract agencies with real problems and specific topics, such as DoD, Homeland Security, and NASA, will often discuss the problem behind the topic in their abstract. Since it is their problem that they have been living with, they know it better than anyone. However, avoid the temptation to simply cut and paste that information into your proposal and do some research of your own to expand upon it. Your significance section should typically run 1 to 2 pages in length. NSF is the exception here. NSF no longer has a separate significance section. Their focus is on commercialization. They are more interested in the commercial opportunity behind the technology, which includes customer needs and market pain point, than they are about the technology itself. NIH calls this section specific aims. However, the 11 other SBIR agencies refer to this section as objectives. Just to keep you on your toes, NIH uses the terms aims and objectives interchangeably. I nearly drove myself crazy 10 years ago while working on my first NIH proposal, trying to differentiate between aims and objectives. I have a somewhat different approach to selecting my aims for a proposal. Consistent with the famous Cuba Gooding movie line, "Show me the money," from the Tom Cruise movie Jerry Maguire, I begin with my budget, which can be a real constraint in determining what I can accomplish in a project. We said earlier that the standard maximum for Phase 1 awards is $150,000. In your budget, agencies allow you to request up to a 7% profit or fee. I recommend that you request the full 7% and take it off the top before determining your objectives. One of the reasons for doing this is that your grant or contract is unlikely to cover all of your direct out-of-pocket costs. An example of these costs is intellectual property protection and patent filing. These costs are generally not allowed under SBIR and STTR. However, they are perfectly legitimate uses of your profit or fee. So given the budget that you are likely to have for Phase 1, your objectives are the 2 to 5 key tasks or groups of related tasks that, 1, are the most important things to accomplish in Phase 1 and are realistic to address given your budget, and 2, best reduce the perception of technical risk from the project, and 3, if successfully completed, will best demonstrate the feasibility of the proposed project and envision commercial product. Contract agencies will often set parameters for you for your objectives. In the case of the Department of Defense, they tell you exactly what they want you to accomplish in Phase 1 and again what they want you to accomplish in Phase 2. The focus of your objectives, then, should be delivering what they ask for. I believe that your objectives are the most important section of your proposal and key to a successful proposal. The reason for this is that they are pervasive throughout. You typically introduce them in your summary, you then spell them out in your objectives, you then write your approach to accomplish them, and finally, you conclude that you've demonstrated feasibility upon successfully completing them. In addition, agencies ask in the objective section for technical questions which you must answer to determine technical feasibility. These can relate to whether you can accomplish something that has never been done before, or whether you can accomplish a particularly challenging component task or subtask. Avoid the temptation to simply restate your objective as a question. Your approach or work plan should be the most substantive and detailed section of your proposal. It should typically account for at least 1/3 to 1/2 of your page limit. Your work plan should be written to your objectives, which should be copied and pasted from the objective section and then discussed one by one. You want to discuss your research design and methods for completing each objective in as much detail as space permits. In discussing your objectives, it can be helpful to break each one down into 2 to 5 component tasks. With the exception of NIH and NSF, which limit you to 7 pages of technical discussion and work plan, most agencies and reviewers want to see a lot of detail regarding the fundamentals of writing that most of us learned in grade school. They want to know who on the team is going to do what, where, when, how, and why to develop your Phase 1 technology. Applicants often mistakenly include more information about their technology or product than they do about what specifically they are going to do to develop and evaluate it. Reviewers want to have confidence that you and your team know exactly what has to be done to successfully complete your project and that you know how to do it. Make sure that between in-house and out-of-house, you have put together a project team that will inspire this confidence. The old proverb is true. A good picture, graphic, or table can actually be worth much more than 1,000 words, but only if it increases the reader's understanding of a project. All too often, I struggle spending several minutes trying to understand a graphic or table, only to give up and conclude in frustration that it did nothing to enhance my understanding of the project. Reviewers won't like that. I have found software projects to be the worst offenders in this regard. One of my tricks of the trade is the completion of an objectives and task table specifying each task, the performance period, and the task owner. Such a table can provide a clear and concise, yet detailed overview of the project in a small amount of space. The table can serve as the centerpiece of your work plan, and you can wrap your narrative around it, referencing it as appropriate. I want to express my thanks and appreciation to Vijay Hanagandhi of Optimal Solutions, Inc., who has granted me permission to use as an example an objectives and task table that he and I developed a few years back. I've already introduced Vijay's project to you as an example of a feasibility study statement. The goal of Vijay's Phase 1 project was to demonstrate the feasibility of using high-power computing technology to rapidly solve large supply chain optimization problems. Vijay had 3 objectives for his Phase 1 proposal. We developed a 4-column objectives and tasks table. In the first column, objectives, Vijay began writing out each objective in order to differentiate them visually from their component tasks. In the second column, he specified each component task for each of his 3 objectives. In the third column, he specified the performance period in weeks and gave the percentage of the total effort that each task accounted for. And finally, in the fourth column, he specified the task owner responsible for completion of the task. In addition to what is going to be done and who is going to do it, reviewers are also interested in where the work is going to be done. If you have several work locations involved in your project, you may wish to add a 5th column to your table for location. An objectives and tasks table can be particularly helpful for NIH and NSF proposals where you are limited to 7 pages of technical content. Vijay submitted this Phase 1 DOE STTR proposal in October 2012. He received notice of a Phase 1 award in January 2013. He submitted his Phase 2 proposal in December of 2013 and received notice of a Phase 2 award in April of 2014. Vijay completed his Phase 2 project last year in 2016 and has now launched his commercial product. For the most part, the SBIR and STTR programs are well regarded. Sometimes an agency will complain about being told how to spend a portion of their extramural R&D budget. However, the only consistent criticism of the program is that not enough technology has been commercialized following Phase 2. Unfortunately, that's a rather fundamental criticism. We said earlier that the bottom line objective of the programs is commercialization and economic growth. Consequently, for the past 20 years, agencies have been putting increasing emphasis on technology commercialization. They began requiring Phase 2 applicants to submit a technology commercialization plan along with their technical proposal. Today, agencies require applicants to begin addressing commercialization in Phase 1. However, just like with pretty much everything else under SBIR and STTR, agencies address commercialization differently. In the case of NIH, they simply ask you to address a few instructional bullets in other sections of the proposal. They are interested in the potential of your project to lead to a marketable product, and they are interested in a description of that envisioned commercial product. In the case of DoD, they require a one-page commercialization strategy and supporting commercialization schedule. In the case of DoD, they require a one-page commercialization strategy and a supporting commercialization schedule. NSF has the most demanding Phase 1 commercialization requirements. They have embraced the positioning as America's seed fund more fully than any of the other agencies. They go so far as to request that you limit your technical discussion and work plan to between 5 and no more than 7 pages of your 15-page proposal. In the remaining 8+ pages, they ask you to address several commercialization-related topics and numerous subtopics. I'm going to close by reviewing my most important advice for proposal writing. First, don't let the siren song sink your business. Make sure that each topic you pursue is consistent with your mission and business goals. Second, try to confirm fit and interest in your project with your targeted agency before you begin writing. Third, remember that your objectives are the most important section of your proposal. If your objectives are not right, the rest of your proposal can't be right. If you're not proposing to do the right things, you won't be successful. Fourth, write the work plan to your objectives and provide as much detail as space permits regarding who on the team will do what, where, when, how, and why to develop your Phase 1 technology. Remember that an objectives and tasks table presents a lot of detail in a small amount of space and can serve as the centerpiece of your work plan. Finally, be Burger King. Use the instructions and evaluation criteria as checklists. Remember to serve your proposal to your targeted agency their way. Thank you for your time and attention.